If your company is remote or hybrid, then you know just how difficult it can be to grow your company's culture beyond a pre-scheduled Zoom happy hour or occasional lunch and learn. Well, this week's sponsor is here to solve that. They're called CultureBot. CultureBot has devised what will likely become the gold standard for growing and blossoming a company culture inside of Slack. The app is like a sidekick for any HR or people professional, automating a lot of the mundane tasks you probably are forgetting to do on a daily basis. Things like birthday and work anniversary celebrations, team shoutouts and kudos, employee introductions, and remote games. It even has health and wellness tips and conversation starters. If that piques your interest, this will get you even more excited. Today, I'm able to share a special promotion for listeners of the podcast. You can get your first 6 months of CultureBot for 50% off. Plus, if your team is under 25 employees, CultureBot is free forever. So if you're looking for a way to create a culture of appreciation and drive increased engagement and togetherness across your team, I definitely recommend checking out CultureBot. Go to getculturebot.com/humanhr. That's getculturebot.com/humanhr to get the offer. Plus, I've added the link in the show notes so you can just click right there. Now, let's get back to the podcast. Welcome to the Bringing the Human Back to Human Resources podcast. I'm Tracy Chernoff, and I've spent my entire professional career in HR. Each week, we'll explore the delicate balance between people and business with the aim to reconnect the two and create meaningful outcomes. Listen in as I share my own experiences, challenge the status quo, and chat with guests from various industries about our mission to bring the human back to human resources. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Open to Work mini-series, where I bring you some really interesting folks who are open to work and getting their names out there, and again, being super vulnerable in this process. I don't know if I would be as open to getting on a girls' random podcast to talk about why I'm open to work, but I think it's awesome. And this mini-series is with Gabrielle Cohen, who actually, interestingly enough, is a friend of a friend. And she and I went to the same college, Binghamton University, but we went at different times. And I just think it's awesome. Whenever I see someone either that I get connected with or anyone's resume that I see, I'm like, oh my gosh, they went to Binghamton too. And it's just like an immediate connection. So Gabrielle and I have had an opportunity to connect on a personal level through this, connection that we have. But obviously, she's here today to walk us through her skill set, her experience, what she's looking for. So without further ado, Gabrielle, welcome to the mini series. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. And I know I could talk about Binghamton all day, every day, but I think you started there when I graduated. So,
What
but
year
was
did
it
you
just as fun
graduate?
as I remember it?
Oh, it was. What year did you graduate again?
2014.
Oh, okay, yeah. So 2014 was my first year.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, so
So we
there you
just
go.
missed each other.
Just missed each other. But you know what? I'm glad that you are a fellow Bearcat, and I'm glad that you had a good experience. And we're going to talk about this a little bit today, but you went to Binghamton for to receive a BA in graphic design. This is like your bread and butter. Your resume is the first time I saw it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is a stunning resume. A lot of the times I see resumes that normally need a lot of work. But actually, those of you who have been on the miniseries have some really nice resumes. So I've got to give it to you. But kudos to you. I think actually the resume is probably the first thing that people are seeing about when it comes to like your ability to design and focus on UX. Is that correct?
Yeah, definitely. I think that and the portfolio, but I do think that both
Yeah.
are very important.
Yeah, and the portfolio, oh my gosh. Thank you for bringing that up. Your portfolio is also gorgeous. And we'll make sure that all of these links are in the show notes too so others can check them out. But actually, let's jump right in. Tell us a little bit about what you're looking for in your next role and what kind of led you to being open to work today.
Yeah, so I've been a graphic designer for about 7 years since I was in college, and I took a boot camp I started in November of 2021. So I just recently finished that boot camp. It was called Springboard, and it was about a 9-month program, but with some pauses, it took me about a year to finish. I was able to take some time off in between, especially when things got really busy, taking that break and even just catching up on the work. But yeah, so I've been actively applying for a job since I finished the boot camp. I got my certificate at the beginning of December. And since then, I've just been looking for any opportunity, really. I've kept my options very open. I definitely feel that design is my strong suit as far as visual design, but I've gotten very into the research side of UX. And I do have to say that I would be very happy in a research role as well.
Very cool. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't honestly, I don't even know that I realized that those roles existed. The UX research.
Yeah, there's so many different positions. It's so hard, to pinpoint exactly what you want to do within UX, especially as a
Mhm.
beginner. It's very generalized. And a lot of times you'll get more of a UX UI position, not so much a UX researcher or a UI designer.
Very interesting. And actually, speaking of this, why don't you walk some of the listeners, like let's assume that some listeners are not familiar with UX or design or even the Springboard certification program. What how did you break into this and what do all of these things mean for someone who might be able to connect you with someone hiring for this type of role?
Yeah, so the way that I got into it, as I said, I have been a graphic designer for a long time, and about I guess it was a little over a year ago, back during the summer of 2021, I started looking for a job. To once I wanted to leave my job that I was at for about 3 years, and at that job, I loved it. It was great. I was designing T-shirt designs and other apparel, and that's what I've been doing pretty much since college. Always T-shirt design and graphics, but I wanted to take my career further. But the problem was is that every time I got to talk to someone for an interview, it always came down to not having enough experience. And
Hmm.
coming from someone like, at the time I had a bunch of years of experience and I thought, I'm a great candidate, but they're like, "Oh, well, you don't have experience in marketing. You don't have experience in UX UI." So I started to realize that I was going to have to start at like the base level if
Mhm.
I wanted to switch industries. For a position with apparel, I was very qualified, but for something in a marketing agency or a product design, I didn't have that experience. So I started to kind of do a lot on my own. Even prior to that, I had started my own business in 2020 when I was still working at my job, but I was furloughed when COVID hit. And I took it into my own hands. I started my own custom t shirt business, built my website. So I already started getting myself into that like freelance space where, anyone would come to me with their design need, whether it was a website, a logo, photo editing. I would just take on all those opportunities. And I think that's what I pride myself most as a designer is that I keep myself very well rounded. And so with that, I decided to go in a one direction. So I started, dabbling in with the GMAT and like thinking, oh, maybe I'll go to business school.
Mhm.
And once I kind of put that dream aside, I was open to UX design and I applied for a boot camp called Springboard. I got a call and the call went really well. They really sold me on UX design. Once they we were on the phone and they're like, "Oh, let me look up the starting salary in New York City for UX designer." And they're like, "Average starting salary is $100,000." And I was like, "Okay, that sounds great."
Right.
So, yeah, I was really excited. I was like, "Yeah, like I'm, excited for the opportunity." And fortunately, I was accepted into the program, and it was the best decision I ever made. And at first, I was
Wow.
terrified because I had not really I had experience with website builders, but I didn't have that much experience with the UX UI
Mhm.
essentially. So, once I started the course, I was terrified that I was not going to know how to do it and that I was going to be a failure and that I wasn't going to be able to like perform well. And the course was great. The way that they laid it out was fantastic. It was so easily digestible and I've connected with so many different people even just from the course. And
Wow.
I talked to them, like I talked to a couple of peers almost every day, even now. So it's definitely built a really great community for me. It and since completing the course, I'm actually on a job guarantee for 6 months or all my money back, which is
Wow.
fantastic. And that's actually one of the bigger reasons why I chose this boot camp over another boot camp because I was thinking like, oh, they're not going to want to give me my money back. I'll get a job.
Right.
So, but now, obviously with the layoffs, I feel like there's it's just been kind of a disaster. So it's a little bit harder to gauge right now. So, I mean, I have that job guarantee, which is great. It's a great fallback, but every week I do have requirements. So I'm still kind of a part of Springboard. Every 2 weeks
Hmm.
I speak to a career coach and I have to apply to a bunch of jobs every week. I have to connect with a bunch of people every week as well, 7 people a week. And, I just cold message people on LinkedIn and, I just get
Right.
to know them. I like to kind of hear about their experience in UX or just any sort of experience within the tech industry. And I actually got a website design gig through that because I
Amazing.
spoke with someone who referred me to someone that was asking them to build a website. And I would have never gotten that job if it weren't for that connection.
That's amazing. All of this, there's so many helpful nuggets of information in what you've just shared. One, clearly you have an entrepreneurial spirit. I've said this before with other mini series guests, and I'll say it again. The entrepreneurial spirit is so important. If you can find a way to build something on your own or within like what you do, whatever that means, it's so good for your overall ability to not only market yourself but also really like hone your skills. So for you to have your own company, which is called GCT Designs, and we'll make sure that first of all it's in your resume as founder and lead graphic designer as it should be. But I know you also have a website, and again in your portfolio you have all this information. So plenty in the show notes for people to continue to learn about what you do outside of the day to day when you're looking for a job or when you're actively working. But it is so important to have that, and so I really applaud you for that. And secondly, the other takeaway that I have here is that you have continued your education and you've continued your learning. None of us are ever finished with learning, and for you to realize that there's this opportunity with Springboard and to learn an additional skill set or to advance your skill set, that's an amazing thing. And to hear that you've created or have been able to create a community out of this, on top of being able to then have some contracted opportunities, like that's the benefit. That's the biggest benefit in doing something like a certification or another program or a continued education program, whatever that is. So kudos to you. That's amazing.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I think, people who listen to this podcast could be, or this mini series could be, HR people, hopefully thinking about you for their next open UX UI role. It could be your future hiring manager. It could be someone who connects you with your next hiring manager. It could also be someone who's in the same position as you are, trying to figure out how they make sense of this open to work world where there have been so many layoffs or moments in time where people have been left unemployed. And so hopefully there are so many different layers of people here taking away that, that there's a way to navigate this experience so that you are still getting something out of it. And so I love that you've continued your education. And are there, what other programs are there out there that you've looked at? Are there other things that you're looking to do to continue to expand your knowledge and your skill set? Or are you looking to kind of close out the 6 months, hopefully by landing a full-time job and then kind of seeing where it goes from there?
Yeah, so originally I came out of this boot camp saying, I'm going to get a job so fast, like
Mhm.
maybe it'll take me 3 months, maybe not 6 months, but I really wanted to hold on to that hope. But, I started my job search right around the holidays.
Mhm.
So already a very difficult time to find a job. So I was like, okay, after the new year, things are going to get better. And then, every week I'm hearing this company laid off this many employees. Like I don't know if this number is accurate, but I was actually just reading a blog and it said that over like 93,000 tech employees have been laid off.
Yeah.
So it's just it's very, and a lot of times I've been seeing articles saying that, UX and that industry is oversaturated, but I don't necessarily agree. I think that right now, a lot of the tech companies, like for their own reasons, had to lay off all these employees. but that doesn't mean that they're not looking for talent. Companies
Right.
are always looking for a better user experience. I've just noticed lately a lot of them want contract roles.
Mm.
So being open to taking something other than a full-time job is becoming more of a reality for me.
Right.
And it was not what I wanted, but it's where I am, and it works with my life because I've been freelancing and running my business, and I also at one point was having a full-time job, and then I went down to part-time. So doing these little projects here and there is definitely fine for my lifestyle. I would just prefer to have a full-time job
Sure.
because it will give me structure.
Sure.
But yeah, taking on like these little projects is really gotten me through the last couple of months of applying because I'll send out a ton of applications a week. I could be sending 30 plus applications a week and maybe hearing back from one or two. And it's really disheartening, and it makes me feel kind of bad about myself sometimes.
Sure.
But I then speak with a lot of peers. I have a couple group chats on LinkedIn with some Springboard alum, and we always keep each other motivated. There's one
Right.
girl that every morning she's like, "Okay, what are your goals for this week?" And or like, "What are your
Wow.
goals for today?" And hearing them say, "Oh, I was feeling kind of sad because I haven't heard back from anywhere," it makes me feel not alone,
Hmm.
which that that just in and of itself makes me feel not alone, and it makes me feel like this has nothing to do with me personally. This is the market, this is the reality we're living in. And with everything that we talk about, it's always, okay, how are we going to get our next opportunity? And some of us have actually collabed. I actually hired one of them to help me rebuild my GCT's website. So the two of us are working together to kind of, brainstorm and figure out where my business is going to go. Because, once I get a full time job, where am I going to take my t shirt business? Am I going
Right.
to still run it, or am I going to kind of stop that? And I'm not really sure what's going to happen. And I don't think that I need to know right now. But
For sure.
because it does feel that it will take me longer to get a full time job, I might as well use my business. And, it's not exactly what I want to do. It's definitely more t shirt oriented. But, within my business, I also do a lot of other freelance. So I'm actually rebranding. So a little inside information. I might be
Ooh.
dropping the GCT designs and just kind of overarching everything into GC design. And then
Ooh.
just be a subsection.
Ooh, I love this. You heard it
Yeah.
here first. Wow, that's
Yeah.
amazing. I
Yeah.
wait, I really love that idea.
Thank you. Yeah, actually this started because I built my original website on Squarespace. That was always
Mhm.
where my portfolio's on Squarespace and my GCTs was on Squarespace. I then
Mhm.
moved GCTs to Shopify because Shopify is fantastic for e-commerce.
Mm.
Then I realized my business was more custom shirts, less of e-com and selling stock designs. I've
Mm.
designed a bunch of shirts over the years, but those are not that's not my bread and butter. My bread and butter is custom t-shirts. So I don't really need to use Shopify. And so I saw that Shopify was going up in price. So I was talking to that UX designer from my course and just saying, I noticed that Shopify is going to go up at the end of April. Like maybe, like if you want to take on this project, because we would always, throw around different ideas of like, oh, what are we going to do together?
Right.
And so then I was like, I think I have a great idea. I think I want to cancel Shopify and also cancel my Squarespace portfolio because I started working in WordPress. I actually just started working in WordPress very recently, and I love it. And
Oh,
it will be able to just kind of take on everything for me. I could move the two together, and I could have my GC design website where I have my portfolio and maybe an inquiry form um, for freelance work, and then also for custom tees. And with WordPress, like the possibilities are endless. It's like I cracked a whole new like universe by starting to work on WordPress, because on some of these other programs like Squarespace, I'm injecting custom code, and
right.
it's just there's just so much you can do. It just doesn't there's just some limitations. And I've gone through the deep dives of the forums on Squarespace, and there's
Mm-hmm.
just some things you can't break through.
It's
So
true.
yeah, and it's like that with a lot of programs, and but that's what you get. Those are much more user friendly programs.
Mm-hmm.
So that is just kind of the nature of that program. But with WordPress, I have not found a single wall that I have not been able to break through, which is
Wow.
insane.
That's amazing. I'm really excited for you though. This is the next frontier for GC designs. I mean, I'm really excited depending on when this episode launches, but also depending on when your potential rebrand launches. I mean, maybe it all happens would happen at the same time. I don't know, but that's amazing and you could be an advocate for WordPress. The way that you speak about it
I
makes me
know.
want to switch
I'll
over
be
from
like the
Squarespace to
spokesperson.
WordPress. Yeah, I'm like, wait, what am I missing? Do I need to go over to WordPress? No, but this
I
is
love
amazing. I
it.
mean, it's amazing. This is like the community that you've been able to rely on, and these are the networks and the relationships you've been able to develop. And actually, I would love to take it a step further. Like, how when you have worked with teams, and obviously as a contractor, there are a lot of pros to being a contractor. It can be very lucrative. You can control your own schedule's destiny, right? Like all of these things can be true for contract work, but it also can be challenging in that you have to figure out how to navigate teamwork and who you might be working with who is might be on the full-time side of a business. But that question is really about understanding like how you work with people. Clearly you have made really strong relationships within the boot camp that you did with Springboard, but take it a step further. Like what is it like working with you on a team?
I do enjoy working on a team. I also enjoy working alone, but I do have to say that being able to bounce ideas off of each other
Mm-hmm.
is just the best way for a product to be pushed forward. There's just so much that I can create on my own and think of on my own. And if I bounce an idea off another designer, or I see what another designer did, I could look at that and be like, wow, I really like, that one particular thing that they did. Maybe if we combine those two ideas together, we can create something even better. So I really love that teamwork mentality where let's bring all of our skills to the table and create something new, create something
Right.
that's even different than what both of us had created, and create our product.
That's amazing. Amazing. And it's really a very good point that in your field, it's super creative and creativity and brainstorming, they kind of thrive hand in hand. And, I hear this a lot on the HR side because I have colleagues who are engineers or also in UX and, they sometimes spend, depending on what they work on, like sometimes they find themselves working alone and they crave that connection because it is an opportunity to share ideas, bounce ideas off of one another. So I really love that you highlighted that point. It's
Yeah, and
true.
one project actually in particular that I worked on, there were three of us, and we started off trying to figure out, where in the project we will thrive most. So this was all Springboard students. So one of them was actually in a different program within Springboard. They were just on a UX track. I was on a UI UX track.
Mm.
And so the one that was on the UX track said that he prefers research. That's, the direction that he wants to go in. And UX research, obviously a little design, but definitely more of the research, like competitor analysis and, studying other, like the heuristic evaluation, make sure that it's up to standards and everything of that sort. So we were like, okay, perfect. So you're going to kind of take on that section and we're all going to
Hmm.
overlap and we'll all help each other, but that's your focus. And then the other designer on the team, she was also on the UI UX track, and she mentioned that UI was her preferred um, area of expertise. So I was like, this is great. So you want to focus on UI, you want to focus on UX, and I love doing both. I love wearing a million hats. So it was great because, I was able to collaborate on both ends and, learn something from each of them. I would sometimes even have a one-on-one call with one of them instead of all three of us together, because we're like, okay, well, obviously you're welcome to come on the call, but we're going to focus only on UX
Right.
design and or only on UI design. And it was a really good dynamic, and it worked really well, especially having people who have different skill sets. It allowed us to create something more than I could have done alone.
Right. Absolutely. This is the value of teamwork, people. It is all about us each contributing a 100% value. It's not a 33, 33, 34. It's really true that every single person can add value to something. And so thank you so much for sharing that. And one of the things that this made me realize is that I did not ask you my favorite question to ask on the mini series, which is um, what what does your resume not tell us about you? Like, if someone is listening and they could potentially hire you or be your next hiring manager or connect you with your next hiring manager, what's like that? What are those things that people are not necessarily taking away from just looking at your resume that they should know about you?
That is a great question. I think I think this is kind of said through my resume, but I guess I want to take it a step further. Where I said, I wear many hats and I have like this broad range of skills. I also do a ton of photo editing. I love to create illustrations. These
Oh,
aren't things that I talk about a lot on my resume because they're not very relevant to UX UI. However, I think they are relevant in some ways. So, and for an example, a website that I'm working on right now with a client, they are creating a custom jewelry brand, and they sent
ooh,
me a bunch of photos of their jewelry, and they asked if I could edit out the background. And I was like, yeah, easy peasy. And so I was like, oh, I'll just go in and I'll like remove the background. And it kind of became a little bit more difficult than that because they were holding it, or they were using like the ring holder, so I have to
mhm,
actually photoshop the rings to kind of like become a circle. So that takes like a lot of time and a
yeah.
lot of effort, and I'm up for the challenge. I have actually photoshopped an arm onto someone. They sent me a bunch of photos.
Ooh,
They're like, "We love this photo, but my arm's moving and my arm disappeared. And here's another photo where my arm is there." And that honestly is like my that's like my I can Photoshop anything.
yeah,
Um,
that's your trophy on the shelf.
yeah, my trophy. But yeah, like I do have the capabilities of photo editing, illustration, and I guess if there's one thing I really want to put out there is that I love to learn and I want to build my skill set, and I'm open to challenges. I love taking on challenges. It's like, oh, that's so hard. I don't know what to do. Okay, well, we're gonna figure it out. There someone can do this. Therefore, why can't I?
That's amazing. I honestly, I feel proud of you because I think you're absolutely right. It's like this mindset is so important for for really any business for someone to join and have a perspective that, there's always something to learn, there's always something to contribute. That's amazing.
Yeah. Another thing, actually, I guess this is more to as an advice to
Yeah.
designers, or honestly anyone in any position. I love the idea of branding. Branding yourself, even if you just make yourself a logo and you're a freelancer, you work for GC Design, that's mine. Before I started GCTs, I just had a logo and it was a GC, and that was my logo for everything. I put it on my LinkedIn and I had it on my business cards. So just branding yourself makes you
Mhm.
more official. And, whether or not it really means anything to other people, I think it means a lot, at least to myself, that I am a brand And I want to show you that I am a brand and that I am creative and that I'm serious about this.
I think it's absolutely sound advice, sage advice, even. Thank you so much. And we are at the end of our mini session here, or mini series, I should say. But I want to kind of just close by saying or asking, what is the ideal environment or job, or what is like if you could have your way tomorrow and have like land your perfect job, what does that look like? What kind of environment are you working in? What kind of company or product are you working for?
So it's a little hard for me to answer that because I've mostly worked for small companies. So I kind of have this like drive to work for a bigger company, somewhere where I could be on a team and have a
Mhm.
director and have peers that we do design sprints. And I guess not being in a corporate environment ever, it's hard for me to know is that where I want to be. But all I can say is that I think that it sounds like a great opportunity to be at a big company where you have that opportunity to do design sprints and, collaborate with other people and maybe even cross across departments. I've never
Mhm.
worked for a company big enough to be able to work with that many different departments. And even at my previous job, our design team, I think at the biggest was 5 people. And our design director, if you want to say, was our boss, the owner of the company. So I would love to just work on a team. I think
Awesome.
like pretty simple. I think I could find my fit even in a smaller company, but as long as I have that ability to collaborate together and be a part of activities such as a design sprint or any sort of, I guess, organized brainstorming session would be amazing because I've only done it on my own for the most part and a little bit in some of the group projects, but everything's been remote. I mean, I guess I don't know if I'll have a remote job or in person, but maybe just more structure to it, because in the small projects we did together, we'd hop on like a Zoom call and write down some notes, but never, I guess, never super organized. And
Mhm.
I just want organization and like structure.
Amazing. Yes. It's a healthy thing to know exactly what you want and what you need out of an environment. And I'm sure that you will get that. And I really appreciate you joining this mini series, this podcast, to be really vulnerable about who you are, where you are today, what you're doing, what you're looking for. I think it's a very admirable thing to do. Like when I reach out to someone asking if they want to come on the podcast, it's I don't ever expect that someone says yes. So it's really, really awesome that you decided to join, and so I really appreciate that. And just to close us out, where is the best place for someone to connect with you if they either have an opportunity for you or want to connect you with someone in their network?
I'd say LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn all the time. I'm trying to be a little bit more active with posting, but yeah, definitely I'm always checking my messages and I'm always open to chatting about anything, even if they just want advice.
Amazing. And we'll have that linked in the show notes so all of the listeners, watchers, viewers, etc., can connect with you just by clicking the link. Thank you so much again for joining, and it's been such a pleasure getting to know you a little bit better and to hear about your skill set and your interests.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been great. I've honestly, even when I just am asked questions, I feel like I learned so much about myself too.
Yes, absolutely. That's why we always say, even if someone isn't necessarily looking for the next thing, like interviewing is such an important skill to maintain. So keep going on interviews too.
I will. Hopefully, I'll get some more.
Yes, you will. I know you will. You're putting it out there. You're putting yourself out there. It'll happen. Of course. Hey, just before you go, don't forget to subscribe to the show so that you are the first to hear when an episode drops each week. And maybe leave a 5-star review and a comment about how much you loved this episode. Plus, if you have someone in mind who would really enjoy this episode, make sure you share it with them. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you next week.